Hey everyone, good afternoon. State Representative Emmanuel Chris Welch here. Thank you for joining me once again for my Sunday Facebook Live conversation. I have another amazing guest with me today. Looking forward to our conversation that we're about to have. But let me introduce him to you before we get into the conversations. We have today the Chancellor of the University of Illinois at Chicago, Michael Amiridis. He has been the Chancellor of UIC since March of 2015. And since arriving in Chicago, he's done some big things. He has focused on leveraging UIC's strengths to elevate, enhance, and sustain the institution by focusing on student experience and success, engaging Chicago and its communities, enhancing UIC's national and international impact and visibility, and operating in new ways to become a more entrepreneurial university. Under his guidance, the development and implementation of strategies to boost student enrollment has produced a 4-year pattern of record campus enrollment. And that was even during the budget impasse years. If you think about that. The enrollment still continued to increase even when the state was not fulfilling its obligation. At one point, or I believe still at this point, enrollment has surpassed over 33,000 students, all while maintaining UIC's status as one of the nation's most diverse campuses. The Chancellor has helped further UIC's mission and commitment to public education, scholarship, research, and community services with the 2019 establishment of the UIC John Marshall Law School, Chicago's first and only public law school. That's a big deal, folks. The Chancellor has initiated ongoing engagement with community, civic, corporate, and elected officials to discuss how UIC's strengths and resources are beneficial to Chicago and the state. And I was extremely honored to serve alongside him and sit next to him many days when we were members of Governor J.B. Pritzker's Educational Success Transition Committee. As you can imagine, we both had a lot of opinions with regard to bettering higher education in the state of Illinois. Chancellor, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm fine, Representative Welch. Thank you for your very kind comments. You know, as you kept talking, I thought this will be a mandatory watch in my household. My wife will have to hear you, and I think my kids should hear you as well.
Well, I'll send you the recording afterward. Tell them it's a mandatory homework.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining me on a Sunday afternoon.
Now, they may want to offer their minority opinion as well, but I hope you will not accept it.
Indeed. Well, let's jump right to it, because I don't want to take up too much of your time on a Sunday afternoon. I know you're a busy gentleman. Let me ask you this question. When did you first realize you were going to shut down the campus at UIC? And what did you do to begin to make that happen in this new world that we're living in during the global pandemic?
Well, we started monitoring the situation with COVID-19 fairly early. I mean, even towards the end of January, we saw the reports coming out of China. At that time, our Department of Public Health was looking into it, my Vice Chancellor of Health Affairs. I personally started looking at the numbers, so started monitoring early. The first real problem, I mean, if you want to see the first action, when did I realize that this is going to get serious in this country instead of something that we monitor outside of the country, was towards the end of February. At that time, I think that the last week of February, I was supposed to travel, and I was expected to go to an international forum to talk about the future of higher education in Europe, and I canceled my trip the week of the 20. I think it was the 21st, 20. I don't remember what was the Monday, but it was the last week of February when we saw Italy actually. The virus spreading significantly in Italy and Iran outside of China. We knew that it would be very difficult to contain it in the United States. Now, if you're looking at at what happened here when it became local and became clear that we have a serious problem was the second week of March. That was the time that the decision was made that it is very high risk. Keep in mind at this point we had no testing available, right? We had no idea actually yet of who are going. We knew that some groups were more vulnerable than others, but we didn't know about young people yet with high degree of confidence. All the information that we had was coming outside of the US, and some of it was contradicting at this point. We didn't know about the asymptomatic. Is there asymptomatic? Is there not? So that was the time, the week of March 9th was the time when we finally said we need to move. The first action that we took was at the beginning of, I think it was the second week of March, the third week of March, when we sat down. At that point, we had spring break coming, and we said you will take 2 weeks of spring break. We start the spring break 1 week early to give us a 2-week period to be able to pivot, to go into online instruction.
Yeah, that March 9th was about the same time we stopped traveling back and forth to Springfield.
Yeah, that was the week.
It was all becoming obvious around, mid-March there. And I think the governor issued the stay-at-home that started on March 17th. So
that's right. We were a few days before the governor's order at UIC when we said, look, we need to stop and take a very good look at this.
So what lessons, Chancellor, did you learn from the spring semester that give you confidence going into the fall that everything's going to be good for our faculty and our students?
Well, first of all, I was amazed by the spirit, the innovative spirit and the resilience of our community. If you had told me in January, right, that not only UIC, but the entire higher education community would be able to change the mode of instruction within a period of 2 weeks across the state and across the country, I would tell you that this is unlikely and you don't know what you're talking about, right? And it happened. So that showed, first of all, the ability that we have when we face a challenge like this to react. And that gives me great hope and great confidence in our community. The ability that we have to take care of each other. Because there were a lot of people who stepped forward. They were the faculty members who stepped forward to take care of this transition that it takes years maybe, but it was done in 2 weeks. The students stepped forward, taking care of each other, being innovative in the way that they get connected. And of course, our staff members, because, we stopped instruction, but we didn't shut down the campus. We had, for the duration of the semester, up until the middle of May, we had somewhere between 500 and 700 students living in the residence halls with us during this period. So we're taking care of them. We're providing food, we're providing housing, we're providing cleaning services to them, making sure that they're okay, and so on. So the ability that we had to do all of this really gives me great hope. We also learned a lot about online education, distance education. This is a great tool, by the way. It is something that it has been used before. UIC was a little bit behind, quite frankly. We had a lot of face-to-face instruction, but our online education, the distance education, was a rather limited component. And it can be very useful, especially for certain, under normal circumstances. And neither you or I believe, or anybody that listens to us knows what normal is anymore. But I hope that when we go back to normal, it is a very useful tool under normal circumstances for working adults that they don't have the time during the day, single parents that they want to put the kids to bed before they take a class late in the evening or over the weekend, for military personnel, right? So there is a lot of people that you can reach through online education, and we're missing an opportunity with UIC. So we learned a lot during the second part of the spring semester on what we do well and what we don't do well. Because the students gave us a lot of their opinions, right? They told us what they don't like. There were a lot of things that we were not ready for, and we're taking a lot of time over the summer correcting them.
As with anything, any dramatic change in our lives, there are positive outcomes and there are negative results. What would you say are the positive outcomes of the experience with mass online learning that you ended up going to, what areas need more work or time to assess the impact? Are we ready?
Yeah,
for school?
I think it's a great new tool that we put in our toolbox, and it is a set of skills that our faculty members obtained in order to do that. I think also, during the summer we have not been idle, because we heard the criticism of the students in certain areas, and we have created, in essence, a summer school for faculty. We have more than 400 faculty members at UIC working during the summer, together with graduate students, preparing courses for the fall that they are really top of the line now, that they follow all the guidelines. They took courses and they took preparation in order to be ready for the spring, for the fall. So that's one positive aspect of the whole situation that we faced with instruction.
Everyone, we are talking with the Chancellor of the University of Illinois at Chicago, Chancellor Michael Amiridis. Please share this conversation on your Facebook feed as well. The Chancellor is sharing a lot of good information, and as students prepare to return to campuses all across the country and here in the state of Illinois, you're going to learn some very useful information. Chancellor, let me ask you, how is UIC making accommodations for students who may be struggling with a decision to enroll in college? Let's talk about that right now, because a lot of people may be afraid to return to a campus right now. Talk to us about that.
Well, there are two components there. One component is a concern about the pandemic, but there is another very serious component that we're facing, which is financial ability. Because at the same time that we have this pandemic hitting us on the health side, we have a very serious financial crisis. The unemployment rates, especially for families, low-income families, the ones that they are below the 70 or 65,000 threshold, which, by the way, a very large percentage of our students come from. It's more than 50% of our students that they come from this one. This is the group, the income group that has been hit the hardest with the unemployment situation that we have been facing. So let's separate the two. Let's talk, first of all, if there are concerns about the safety and the health and safety of the students coming back to campus, we have put a large number of measures in place for them. First of all, in terms of what you expect to see, required masks on campus, specific special distancing requirements, sanitizing on campus. We have canceled all the large classes from face-to-face, and we have taken them to online. So any class with over 50 students this fall will be online, but we maintain the smaller classes and move them into larger classrooms in order to spread them out. So the social distancing component will be there. We are also implementing an aggressive testing and tracing program. First of all, upon the arrival on campus, all resident hall students, student athletes, and also the performing arts students, because there it's much closer contact, and there is, choirs, for example, can be super spreaders in choir practices. So in these cases, we will test them upon arrival. We'll test them twice, actually, upon arrival within a week period, and then continue to monitoring them as well. We also will have a random surveillance testing program. We will not, at least at the beginning, we will not be able to test everybody on campus, but we will start with a few hundreds, and we expect that within a few hundred a day, by the way, and we expect that within a period of 3 to 4 weeks, we will be up to maybe 3,000 to 4,000 random tests a day. So we'll monitor also the asymptomatic students as well, and we will know what kind of percentages we have that they show up without symptoms and yet test positive. We're able to do that because we're using the saliva test, and we're using applications actually to trace the students and isolate them in case they get tested positive. So I think that from the point of view of the health and safety, they are as safe as they can be in this environment. I think that with very reasonable, if there is any kind of deviation, if we start seeing an increase in the number of asymptomatic tests that we get or an increase in the Chicago area, we're ready to pivot to 100% online as needed.
UIC is located right off of the 290 Expressway, the Eisenhower, right near downtown, right near CTA transportation. You actually have a stop where folks can get on and off right there on campus. And a lot of your students live at home and commute back and forth. That doesn't give you any concern that
yes, it does.
On-campus learning could really, UIC could become a super spreader?
Yes, it does. And that's why you're working very closely with CTA. We want to make sure that CTA actually, the Chicago Transit Authority, follows the same measures, and we are able to see that our students are comfortable with this. It's also our staff, right? Our faculty and staff, that they come the same way. Look, there's also the option if students want to stay at home, even the classes that they are going to be face-to-face, they will be accommodating them. So if there are any kind of special reasons to stay at home because of their own health situation, right? Some students that they may be at risk, or because of family members that they are at risk, or simply because they're uncomfortable doing it. They have the option to do this as well, right? We will accommodate them in this.
We've recently heard in the news that several students are thinking about suing their universities with regard to tuition. If students opt for online learning exclusively, will their tuition be reduced, or are you going to charge them full tuition?
The tuition will not be reduced, because the basis for tuition, the money where the tuition goes, is the faculty members, that they are the same faculty members who are not increasing the size of the class. Sometimes the comparison is made with online-only institutions or corporations, because some of them are for-profit corporations. But in that particular case, the reason that the tuition is lower is because they teach maybe 2,000, maybe 1,000 students with one faculty member. It's exactly the same faculty members. It's exactly the student to faculty ratio that we have, that we're using, and they will have the same access to the faculty. They're also making progress towards the same degree that they would receive, not a different type of degree. Where the discussion, though, becomes pertinent is the fees, because it's tuition and fees. And what we did in the spring was that the minute that we pivoted and went online, all the services that they were no longer available to the students, student unions, gym, athletic events, right? We refunded this. If this is going to be the case in the fall as well, we will refund the services that we were not able to provide. So I would separate the fees from the tuition.
College is already difficult and stressful enough. Why wouldn't a student just take a gap year this year and just say, once we're out of this pandemic, I'll return to school?
Right, and that gets us into the second part, right? The finances as well, because we talked about the health and safety. If you're going to take a gap because of health and safety reasons, well, you can continue without concern about your health and safety if you stay online 100%, or if you decide to come in. And again, the measures that we are taking with addition of random testing, right, and tracing, I think it provides a good shield. Right, but still, if you decide you're not satisfied, you can still continue your education. If it's a financial reason, that's a different story. Right, and I know that a lot of these discussions are taking place around the dinner tables in the evenings, because even the students who said, "I'm going to school," right now, now is when the rubber hits the road, right, and they have to show up. So, if it is at all possible, I would suggest that they will not take a gap year. And I'll tell you why. I have seen this through I've been in higher education now 26 years as a faculty member, as a department chair, and I have talked with hundreds of students. In many cases, I have had genuine intent to go to college, or alternatively to go to graduate school, or to go to law school, to professional schools. And but I'm going to take a gap year, right? And the statistics that I had 15 years ago, when I was personally advising students, was that out of these students who genuinely say that they will continue after a year, less than 30% does it. And part of the reason is because life happens, right? And during these life alternative events, if you're not already vested in it, you decide not to do it. So I think there is a risk taking a gap year if it's not absolutely necessary, right? And the risk is that they may find a path outside of the university, outside of a higher education, not UIC, any university, outside of a higher education path that may appeal to them at this point, but I'm afraid it's not going to serve them well in the long run, 5-10 years down the line.
So we know, Chancellor, that a lot of the students take a gap year because of financial reasons and things happening in their families. But right now, this global health pandemic really has people concerned, and we know the cases are continuing to rise all across the country. The governor said this week that he's real concerned with what he's seeing here in Illinois. A lot of counties are now on the warning list. And we just recently heard that at Bradley University in Peoria, they had a cluster of students test positive for COVID-19 because of their off-campus activities. Does this not concern you? Hey, we were both in college once. You know what happens in college.
Well,
and you can control your campus environment, but you can't control what's going on off campus. And then they're going to bring that to campus, to your faculty and other students. How do you address that?
I understand exactly what you're talking about. Now, Bradley is different than UIC, very different than UIC. Our students, in their vast majority, because of their socioeconomic background, because of their family situations, they come to campus, they do their classes on campus, and then they go to work. Or they go back to school. So some of these activities that they are associated with fraternities and sororities, which are associated with social groups outside of the campus, we don't see that much of it here anyway. It's not now. We haven't seen them during the 5 years that I have been here or before. We have also have some evidence during the spring, because as I mentioned to you, we had on the order of 500 to 700 students who remained on campus. And there was no significant cluster or outbreak there. In fact, we were testing anybody who was worried and wanted to be tested. And we found only 2 cases among these 600 students that remained on campus during the peak of the pandemic here. I also finished this today, and I just sent out to the rest of the group to do the editing and correct my mistakes, basically. A pledge that we're sending out to our students, a contract, basically, a social contract with the students that say, I will be careful on campus, I will be careful off campus. Look, I have 2 kids that are of this age. I know what they will say, and I know what they do sometimes. But a lot of our students are responsible and will follow this. Plus, the other benefit that we have, quite frankly, Representative Welch, is the testing that we will do. Once again, we will do surveillance. Once that we see the percentage of asymptomatic tests within our own population start creeping up, that's when we will make the decision that this is not sustainable, that everything that you're saying is happening, actually.
Well, Chancellor, I have the benefit of knowing you, knowing your team, and trust in the things that you're putting in place. But now I'm a nervous parent getting ready to send a kid off to college. Kids are
freshman, first year.
Freshman, oh, especially the parent of a freshman. I'm nervous. Give me some advice. Help me out here a little bit.
Well, maybe you want to keep him close to him or her, right? It's a son or a daughter.
Either or. I'm the parent of a son or daughter getting ready to go to college, and I'm nervous about sending them there during COVID-19.
This year, maybe the best choice is send them to UIC. And don't worry about any other campus that they're going to visit, because UIC will take care of the students and they're close to home. So that's my first advice. I think what is important, because I'm in the same boat. I have 2 kids that they're in college, and my son actually is about in 2 weeks to fly to South Carolina, where he's going to school, which is a hot spot right now, in a school that says we will have face-to-face instruction, hell or high water, we're going to do it. Right? So I face exactly the same question. What I'm doing is I'm monitoring as a parent very closely what are the measures that they are taking. And I can tell you that if I think that they're not satisfactory, I will say, okay, you may want to go, but you will not go. And the second part is that I'm telling him, especially the younger one, because the older one is a graduate student by now, and she knows how to take care of herself. I'm telling him to make sure that he follows all the guidelines. The other component, Representative Welch, is that we do follow all the guidelines at UIC that IDPH, Chicago Department of Public Health, and the Illinois Board of Higher Education are following. So anytime, and I heard the statement from the governor as well, but anytime that the governor gets to the point that he is not confident anymore, of course, he will follow as all the schools in the state.
Chancellor, I see I only have about 4 minutes left. If you got some extra time, I just only have a few more questions.
Time flies. I have plenty of time. I don't know if people will tolerate us for more than half an hour.
Give me about 10 more minutes. I only have a few more questions. Let me ask you this: What are higher education institutions doing to prepare for the possibility of a second wave? I mean, we're technically still in the first wave. I mean, if we're in a second wave come September, October, what do you do?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that we are in the first wave because we see a flare up across the country. For some of these states, it's the first time, but we see some states. I mean, Louisiana is one of them. Arizona is another one that they have been surpassing by now the numbers that they have seen in April and March. And unfortunately, without able to control travel between states, we're vulnerable. Everybody is vulnerable. So the city of Chicago is making an effort to quarantine people, but it's based on their cooperation. So we will be ready at higher ed at any point that we see the numbers creeping up above threshold limits to pivot to 100% online education, as we did in the spring.
You know,
whether in September, October.
A lot of public schools, elementary schools, high schools, they've been announcing the last week or so that they're going straight to online for the first semester. Why take the risk? Why not just go straight to online for the first semester, and let's hope and pray that everything's okay to return come January?
I think the major component for us is the desire of the students, because the students want to come back. They have made it very clear in our surveys and the interactions that we had that the majority of the UIC students, they wish to come back to campus. They see value in being in the campus environment. Quite frankly, also, for some of them, is a better environment, much better environment to learn and to develop than it is at home. That's why several hundred of them decided to remain on campus in April and May. And talking about gap years, we don't want to force these students to have to take a gap year if we're not open.
Yeah, well, Chancellor, we're in a. I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit.
Sure.
We've been talking about COVID-19, which is obviously pretty serious, and that's one of the crises that we're currently in the midst of. But we're also in a watershed moment in our nation and our state's history. Can you tell us what UIC's minority student numbers look like and what you're doing to continue to improve those numbers?
Well, as you probably know, Representative Welch, UIC is a minority serving institution, but this designation is not because of the high number of Black students. And I want to focus on Black students in particular, because we have done very well in other underrepresented minority groups like the Asian Americans, the Latinos, the Latinx students. But it has not happened with the Black students. And that's, I sent a message to campus as soon as the first cases of protest and civic unrest just after the killing of George Floyd took place, telling them that we're dealing with two crises here, three actually if you add the financial one, but we're dealing with an endemic We have the COVID pandemic, but we have also an endemic crisis of structural racism, and specifically as it manifests itself for our Black neighbors, friends, and citizens. The UIC numbers for Black students have increased over the last 5 years. When I came here, you mentioned that I came here in 2015. The number was around 2,200 students on campus. 22 to 2,300 Black students on campus, and from that number went to 2,600. So if you look at and that was last fall, if you look at the percentage, it went up by 12-13%. But this is not because the percentage of students changes, it's because UIC is growing, and the Black students represented the same percentage of growth as everybody else. If you look at the percentage as a percentage of the students on campus, it's around 8%. And that doesn't represent Chicago. It doesn't reflect the numbers of Chicago or even the state. But it's Chicago that we are talking about here, and that's what we are doing. So this is not new. This number has been at this level for almost 20 years now. Several administrations before me have dealt with the situation, and it's a difficult problem to solve. But I have told our students, I have told our faculty and staff that as progressive as UIC is, as much as we have been at the front line of several social justice issues in the state and in the country, apparently we have failed in this area. And there are two areas that we have failed to significantly increase the percentage of Black students and the percentage of Black faculty. Now, there are pipeline issues. It's a difficult problem. It is associated with the number of graduates, especially from the Chicago public schools. If you look at the Black graduates from the Chicago public schools, actually they're not growing. The numbers are going down. There is a migration towards the suburbs. When we get into the suburbs and try to recruit there, we have a much harder time as UIC. But it's also the environment on campus, and we have been working on this. The students demand to see the numbers that they are representing Chicago. And I think that if we fail at this once again at this moment in our history, we have done things. I mean, we have gone test optional in terms of SAT, because there is a correlation with the SAT scores. A large number of Black students graduating for public schools here in Chicago have a problem even taking the test because of financial reasons, because of availability, or they take it once and that's it. So we are working on this right now, because if we don't do this time around, I don't think it will never be done.
So you and I have had several conversations, and I've always asked you that question, and I'm going to stay on you, because we can definitely do better, and you're going to stay on your team. I'm hoping the next time I ask that question, we're better than 8%. But let me ask you this as well, because I sent the president of the system a letter, along with other presidents of universities and colleges across the state, a letter regarding their retention of Black businesses and Black professionals. How is UIC doing with regard to giving business to Black businesses?
And
by the way, this is Black Business Month, so tell me something good.
Well, by the way, I received the letter as well, and I would like to respond to you as UIC, as well as the U of I system, because sometimes when we aggregate data, the data become a little bit less sharp, right? I want to make sure that you have a very clear picture of what's going on. At UIC, we have had some very good hits with Black businesses over the last couple of years. We had a couple of large construction projects. You were present during the academic and residential complex when we opened it and when we broke ground. That actually had a 30% minority participation that went to a Black business there. And we're talking about tens of millions in this particular case. We're about to break ground on an outpatient surgery center project across the street from our hospital, because we are building capacity in terms of surgery. 36 million out of that project has been awarded to BEP vendors. And my understanding is that it's primarily a black construction subcontract that we have. And also there is the same group is taking care of the atrium of the hospital. So that altogether is on the order of close to $40 million in terms of construction. Where we haven't seen significant improvement is in some of the professional contracts. We have done better with IT, much better. We are a success story in IT. And part of the reason that we were able to do that with IT was because a few years ago, there were a sheltering arrangement that was produced by the state in terms of procurement rules that allowed us to go directly to minority-owned businesses without going through the procurement process by the state. So you can actually help us if there is a similar agreement for a short period of time, because this way people get into the system, they learn how to deal with it. It's not a very easy system to navigate in terms of certification. But if we can expand this to professional services for a short period of time, will help significantly. We are doing procurement symposia every year, trying to get people in. We have worked together with elected officials. Congressman Davis, together with us, had a big event for health sciences and healthcare providers that we did on our campus to try to get people familiar and help them navigate through the process. I think we're better in this than we are with the students. That doesn't mean that we are excellent. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but we did have some very good success stories over the last couple of years here. And we will provide you, we will respond back and we'll provide you the numbers.
I'm looking forward to your data. I'm going to definitely dive into that a little bit more. I'm certain that you can probably improve your Black professional numbers just in looking at your UIC alums. You've produced a lot of accountants and lawyers and a number of investment managers just by starting looking at your own alums. But last question, you've been great in letting me go over here. I'm going to give you an opportunity to brag about those Black lawyers that you're producing. How are you doing at the UIC John Marshall Law School? How's it gone this past year?
It's going very well. It's as you know, it was a great union, bringing two institutions that they're committed to Chicago, they're committed to the public good, and they're committed to advancing underrepresented minorities. I mean, Marshall was graduating African American and Latinos before anybody else was with law degrees, and always practice-ready lawyers. It's not producing, constitutional scholars or producing lawyers. So it was a great union, and the first year has been outstanding. I hear from Dean Dickerson that the recruitment is going very well. By the way, the school has moved more than 20 points up in terms of rankings. It used to be, there are different tiers. It moved one tier up, and now is threatening the next school in Chicago in terms of taking them over in the rankings and the recognitions. Of course, at UIC we don't care about rankings, but when they go well, we like to mention them as well.
Yeah, well, you know what? I said that was my last question, but let me kind of tie a couple of those questions together. So the data that you send me, will it include John Marshall's hiring of Black professionals as well, or do I need to send you another letter?
No, what it will include is external contracts, right? I think that's what you asked for. If you're talking about our own staff, faculty and staff numbers, that's a different story. I'll be happy to do that.
No, we're talking about what's in the letter, the black professionals, accountants, investment.
Yeah, it will. As consulting, right? Not as staff members, not as people who work for the university.
I have those numbers already.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Chancellor, for taking time out of your busy Sunday. You've given me an extra 10 minutes, and I don't want to be greedy here.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You're a good man. Keep up the good work. I'm going to keep challenging you, though. You know me. I've enjoyed sitting on the couch in your office and having conversations, and just a couple of the Zoom conversations we've had during the pandemic. We've had some good conversations.
And I also appreciate, as everybody in higher education does, Representative Welch, your commitment to education. your support for higher education. You are one of the best friends that higher education has down in Springfield. And, yes, you're giving us a hard time, understandably so. You're holding us accountable, which is exactly what you're supposed to do.
I'm just making some good trouble.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So we much appreciate all of your support down in Springfield.
Appreciate you, Chancellor. You'll be hearing from me soon. I'm looking forward to receiving that letter from you. In the meantime, good luck on the start of this upcoming school year, and keep all those students and faculty safe. God bless you. I wanted to tell everyone, COVID-19 is still out there, everyone. Please take this seriously. Please also visit my website at www.emmanuelchriswelch.com and click on the yellow tab right at the top, and you can follow the numbers on COVID-19 for the state, the county, and you can also follow zip codes right here in the 7th District just to track these numbers. This is a serious thing that we're all living in the midst of. And so on that note, what I'm going to ask all of you to do, including you, Chancellor, is wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. Can you do that for us?
Absolutely. Stay well. Stay well.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.